Today in the AWS Developers Podcast, we're talking about Strands and AI agent. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for downloading the AWS Developers Podcast. We are available every Friday in all good podcast applications, Apple, YouTube, Deezer, Spotify, you name it. If it is a good podcast app, there is a good chance that you can find the AWS Developers Podcast. And today we're going to talk about a new open source framework, or relatively new because everything is moving fast in this space. A few months ago, AWS released an open source framework to help you to develop your AI agents. It's called Strands, and I have the pleasure to welcome Arron Bailiss, your tech lead for Strands. Thank you for being here. How would you define Strands in your own words?
Yeah, hey Sebastian, thank you for having me here. So, Strands agents, how would I describe it in my own words? Good question. I would say Strands agents is, well, we've seen a few agent SDKs appear over the last months, the last couple of years as well. And we used a lot of them internally to build QDeveloper, Kiro, some of the AI service products within AWS. And we found a lot of these frameworks to be cumbersome and not leverage, the latest features of some of the newer models. So yeah, we built Strands, and we've tried to make it as simple as possible to get started. Very easy developer experience, familiar to people writing Python code. But we tried to also make sure it's not just used to build demos. I think this is a common cliche in the agents world.
I can write hello world, but I cannot go to production with it.
Exactly. So that's what we tried to kind of instill as sort of the ethos of Strands. It's very easy to get started, low friction, low cognitive load. But then when you want to scale out to production, and we released Agent Core in preview recently, that's the idea. So we can very easily shift that work over to production as well when we're building.
That's what I love with Strands. It's like 2 lines of code to get started and to build your first agent. And it's not an AWS thing. I mean, by default, it goes to Bedrock, but I can use other large language model hosted outside of AWS as well. When I saw that it's open to Olama and to Anthropic, I just have to enter my API key and say, we are doing things a bit differently there than traditionally.
Yeah, I think the last year or two, I think we've heard a lot from customers. They appreciate this, right? The ability to customize and combine things, especially in the AI space. There are so many different use cases, whether it's, your chatbot, very familiar kind of agent, or whether you're integrating it into as part of another system, a piece of a workflow where you're applying language intelligence, basically, to very different use cases, perhaps applying it to robotics and that kind of thing, right? Yeah.
How would you define an agent? Because I have that discussion frequently with developers. Is a client that called an MCP tool, is it an agent already? Or do you need to integrate some LLM to make it an agent?
Yeah, so with Strands, at least, how we've defined an agent, it's essentially two core things, and then there are extra things you can optionally bolt on to your agent. So the core things are the model itself, right? As you mentioned, many models available on Bedrock, many models available from other providers as well. You can add your own provider if you have that. So it's the model, which does the reasoning and that sort of stuff for you, along with a set of tools. And these tools give your agent, the ability to remember things, right? So you can come back 1 week later and it remembers what you worked on today, that sort of stuff. It can access the internet.
It can act on my environment, make an API call for me.
Run some code for you. Yeah, exactly. So we're defining an agent as kind of those 2 things in combination, and they're executing in a loop. right? So your agent, you give it some context, and this could be through a conversation, this could be through an event,
An API call.
an API call, could be an asynchronous event, could be running on a schedule. It kind of grabs that context and runs over it in a loop, right? Calling your tools, getting information from them. Maybe there's a web search, maybe it retrieves the memory, maybe it runs a piece of code for you, and using all of that information, loops through it until it's satisfied that it has an answer for you. Or it can, also ask you a question, right, to try and get more information. So yeah, the model, the tools, working together in a loop. We call our SDK here Strands agents. We think of it as kind of the two strands of DNA, the model, the tools intertwined. Yeah.
And that's what make it different from other open source framework to help developer to build agent. It's the fact that we are center on the model and provide easy access to the tools.
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of things that perhaps make Strands different to some of the other agent SDKs that we've seen, and we've used a lot of them internally. As I mentioned briefly, maybe I can talk about it a little more now. We initially built Strands to serve our own needs internally in Amazon and AWS.
Also, it was an internal framework first.
Yeah, Strands has existed in a very early form for many, many months. We moved very quickly to open source it towards the start of this year. But we built Strands initially because we've used a lot of frameworks internally. Open source, third party, a couple of our own internal frameworks as well. And they were built kind of more around the 2023 sort of era, where you really had to kind of fight with the model to constrain it, to make it call a tool accurately, to make it respond with, some structured output like JSON, so I can parse it and use it in another system, that data from the model. These other frameworks we've used and that we built ourselves internally as well were built in that era. And I think we've seen this year, 2025, the year of agents, as it's being called, we've seen a shift towards a more, we're calling it a model-driven approach,
Which
where,
means?
instead of having to fight the model with very verbose prompts, listing really individual granular steps for how the model should behave, having lots of error handling code, having our developers write, a graph or a workflow to go through steps and loop back. And all of this logic had to be written by builders. Some of the newer frameworks this year, like Strands, lean into this model-driven approach, which is kind of a different paradigm or way of thinking about it, I would say. What we're doing there, instead of having to, think about all these different edge cases, all these different conditions, and of course we can't anticipate every condition. Instead of that, we lean more into allowing the model to do that kind of workflow orchestration for us. We give the model the relevant context, we give it a set of useful tools, and we let it go to work. And we found that produces, first of all, more productive performance agents that actually do what we want them to, can handle more edge cases, but it's also easier for our builders, our developers within AWS, on the Q developer teams. We can now build very powerful performant agents in a few weeks instead of what used to take us 5 or 6 months.
Wow. So
Yeah.
that's the acceleration that is allowed by using that SDK. You mentioned Amazon Q Developer. What other AWS tools are using Strands internally?
Yeah, we have quite a few using it internally. I'd say a couple of the big ones, definitely Q Developer. I think Q CLI was one of the first bigger ones we launched on Strands, I would say, back at the start of this year. There are a few others. We have AWS Glue using a few pieces. We have some billing related kind of agents as well. Um, Kiro is also another product that we've
Hmm.
launched recently that takes advantage of some of the nice cool stuff we've added to Strands.
It's a
Also, really,
spec-driven development IDE that goes beyond vibe coding.
yeah, exactly. Trying to add perhaps a little bit more structure
Hmm.
to vibe coding, and using agents to help you build software as like a pair programmer, adding more structure to that. Yeah, spec-driven development, but it behind the scenes, it's using Strands. Yeah, so it kind of shows how just you mentioned Sebastian, we can create a very simple agent from 2 or 3 lines of code, and that is how our projects start internally. That is how they start. That's how we built some of these projects I mentioned, and then we're able to ship them, into production on things like Agent Core, ECS, Lambda. We have full observability, right? So we are able to understand and record what the agent is thinking and how
Well,
it's performing actions.
we're going to go into the functionalities or the possibilities of strands in a moment. But what you said about strands being used internally is super important for customers as well, because we can be the best SDK developer or library developer. It's when this piece of code lands into the hands of other developer that we realize, oh, we need an API for that, or that developer experience might be improved if we add this or that or that. So before we land the strands in front of our customer, we use it internally in services like Glue, like Amazon Q, as you mentioned. So it's not something that came out of the blue. It's validated. It's in production in real AWS services. And we have some requirements in terms of scalability and security that are quite elevated, so it validates strands in such a way. But after that remark, you mentioned some of the capabilities. So if I'm a
Yes.
developer, how can I get started, and what's the type of help that strands will give me?
Yeah. So, well, we have the Strands Agents website. Great place to get
Mm-hmm.
started.
And the link is
Strands.
in the notes of this podcast. So you just scroll
Yes.
down in your app and you find the link.
Yeah. So on the Strands Agents website, we have a couple of really useful pages on there. The user guide, documentation. From there, you can go to the quick start. On the welcome page, you will see the few lines of code to get started very quickly. And on the left navigation menu, you can see, yeah, many different features that are supported, yeah, multi-agent, streaming, details about adding um, pre-built tools, MCP tools, your own tools that you want to write, and yeah, observability, as I mentioned, so you can understand what your agent's doing, that sort of stuff. Great place to get started, the website. They're also on GitHub, um, github.com/strandsagents. We have a few repositories there. One of them is the samples repository, and we have a few dozen or so samples of strands being used for various use cases. So it starts off with a few tutorials going through the concepts, evolves into more advanced scenarios and actual use cases, multi-agent systems, autonomous agents, all of that kind of thing.
At the core, as a developer, I just need to create an agent, a class or instance of a class, and pass a prompt, and that's it. I have an agent in one line of code at the very beginning, like hello world type of thing. And then what as a developer I should add? Typically, I will add a list of tools. So I will define MCP tools and pass this tool to my agent as well.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
agent will manage the loop for me automatically.
yeah. We have usually you start with the agent class, as you mentioned. Uh, Import agent,
Mm-hmm.
define your agent, and there you can actually start with defining nothing for your agent, right? And it will use some sensible
Default.
defaults for
Mm-hmm.
you. However, you can customize everything. So yeah, as you mentioned, you can change your system prompt, right? The kind of gives your agent its identity and role in the scenario that you're going to use it for. The model, of course, can be changed. You can use Amazon Nova models, you can use Claude, you can use GPT models, many different providers there. If you have your own model service, you can integrate that. Then you add your tools. Those are the usual things that folks are modifying, right? Their system prompt, the model, the tools. It's the core kind of three things that folks modify. And then there are many other things as well that help you, take it to production, I would say. You can bolt on these extra things as well afterwards.
Talking about tools, Strands can be used as an MCP client to call tools, but I can build a tool with Strands as well. So if I'm a tool developer, I can expose my tool as an MCP server tool.
Yeah. Strands supports MCP tools. So it allows you to, there are many popular MCP servers on the internet. You can hook those up to your agent, give it really powerful capabilities, web searching, executing code, many things. Too many.
And it's not only local tools accessible through STDIO, it supports also remote HTTP tools as well.
Yeah, and if you're looking to write your own tool, you can obviously write an MCP server and connect that to your agent. You can also, in the Strands Python SDK, you can write a very simple function in Python, and you type @tool just above your function definition in Python, and now you can add that to your agent as well, which is very powerful. You're able to run any Python function as a tool.
So your MCP tool, your first MCP tool is just one line away from your existing Python code. You just add a type annotation on top of your function, and Strands will transform that function into an MCP tool. A few months ago, Google released another very important protocol. It's A2A. So I see MCP more like a vertical protocol from an agent to call tools, and A2A for agents to be called in between themselves, agent to agent. I know it's a bit more blurry because an agent can be a tool and blah, blah. But Strands support A2A as well?
It does, yes. And multi-agent is also a very hot topic this year. We have a few things for support for multi-agent use cases in Strands. A2A is one of them. We launched version 1 of Strands a couple of months ago, and with that release we included a lot of stuff to make developers' lives easier when building multi-agent applications or integrations into their workflows. A couple of these are that tool decorator I mentioned, @tool, and then you define your Python function. That Python function can also be an agent itself, right? So this is agents as tools, where you have a main orchestrator agent that maybe interacts with your user, talks to them. It has tools that allow it to call other agents. It can even create them dynamically itself, or you can predefine these agents, right? Lot of flexibility there. So that's one mechanism.
This is where I found it blurry, as I said, because a tool can be an agent can be a tool, so the distinction between all these is not very clear. I try to keep it clear in my mind, but I know in reality it's very blurry.
Yeah, the tools, it's kind of like a USB port for your agent, I would say, a tool, right? You can plug it into your agent, and now it can use that tool. What that thing does that you just plugged in, right? It could be a webcam, could be a mouse, could be a keyboard, could be many things that you just plugged in with USB, could be a phone, right? I think it's the same with tools, right? This is why agents can be so powerful. Those tools can do anything, really. You can run any code with that tool. So agents as tools is a very interesting multi-agent implementation pattern. It's kind of the lead agent with specialists, right? It can call out to those specialists and consult with them.
So one of them is the orchestrator of my business function or the task I want to do, and it can delegate tasks to specialists, as you mentioned them. It's a good analogy. Sub-agents that will be responsible for a very specific task.
Exactly. There's also swarms, agent swarms.
What is a swarm?
A swarm, yes. So it takes the name. The name is inspired by bee swarms, where it's a self-organizing team of agents. So we can define, maybe 3 agents. Maybe we have a researcher, maybe we have a writer, and maybe we have like a publisher. 3 different agents: researcher, writer, publisher. We can add those to a swarm. Very simple in Strands. We have a swarm class. Just like you define an agent in Strands with one line, you define a swarm in one line. Pass in your agents. There are other configuration options as well if you want to customize things. But you add your agents to this swarm, invoke the swarm, and the agents in there, they communicate with one another back and forth, right? And they decide themselves who to pass parts of the task on to. So let's say, for example, I ask it to write me a report on generative AI in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
The swarm will be invoked, and the researcher, the writer, the publisher will discuss among themselves, and you can see them talking to each other. It's kind of interesting to see. They organize among themselves and say, hey, first of all, we need to research. They're aware of each other's capabilities, the request that they've been given, and they say, hey, researcher, you need to do some research first. So the researcher agent goes and does that. Once that's complete, it says, hey, I've done the research. Now I need to pass this on to the writer to write the report on generative AI in 2025. The researcher does that. Maybe it's missing some information for the report. So it calls the researcher and says, hey, you're missing information about May 2025. The researcher gets that information, passes it back to the writer. The writer can now complete its report, passes it to the publisher, sends it off to, wherever we want it to be published, and marks the task as complete. So
So
I have
in that case, there is no central agent that is organizing the workflow. The agents are coordinating themselves. What enables that to happen? There must be some kind of discovery of the different capabilities. Is it in the A2A protocol that there is such capabilities, or is it something specific to Strands?
So this swarm, this is a Strands component.
Constraint.
So this is specific to Strands, yeah. Something that we're working on at the moment is enabling you to add these A2A agents as agents in a swarm.
Mm-hmm.
For A2A at the moment, we have a in Strands support for, you define your agent, you import the agent class from Strands, you define your agent in one line or whatever it may be. And we have a class and a function there as well that converts that into an A2A server. And what that does is it makes your agent discoverable using the agent to agent protocol, makes it discoverable for other agents. They can interact with it. It can be part of a multi-agent system, and these can be any agent, right? They can be third-party remote agents, perhaps an agent written in another framework. It doesn't have to be Strands. They can all work together essentially.
And the swarms, all the agents need to live on the same machine, or they can be removed and talk through a network to each of them?
Yeah, currently the swarms are on the same machine.
Mm-hmm.
Something that we're working on there at the moment is adding the support for remote nodes, remote agents in the swarm. Yeah.
So typically as a developer, I start to play with Strands. I write my first line. I have an agent, then I add more lines, more tools, more complexity. I test locally. And as you mentioned, Strands is ready for production, scalability, and security as well. So how can I deploy my Python code that I just craft with love and my first agent? Where can I deploy that? Should I create an EC2 instance, Lambda, Bedrock Agent Core? What are the options?
A lot of options.
Anywhere.
Yeah, pretty much if you can run Python there, you can deploy there. Just as an extreme example.
So not only AWS, it can
Not
be
only
really deployed
it doesn't have
anywhere.
to be just AWS either. No, it can be anywhere. And this is really helpful as well. That ethos I mentioned at the beginning of our discussion. We really want the developer experience to be super simple to start with and friction free, so you can focus on, well, your application, your use case, your business logic, right? So you're able to run this entirely locally on Windows, Linux, Mac OS.
Mac. Mm-hmm.
And anywhere you can run Python, you can deploy to.
So
So
EC2, Docker, ECS, EKS, Lambda,
yes,
Lightsail.
exactly. Exactly. A lot of places. We have, again, on the Strands Agents website, we have at the bottom of the left navigation,
Mm-hmm.
you'll find some
A deployment
deployment
guide.
guides.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're working on making this simpler as well with CDK and Terraform constructs at the moment. But yeah, the idea is that you can deploy to any of these places: Agent Core, EKS, ECS, Lambda, wherever.
And what do you see from our customer? Because from your position, you're talking with a lot of Strands user, developer customers. What are the typical ways today to deploy? Is it more serverless, Lambda, or container, Kubernetes, and the big infrastructures?
Yeah,
It depends.
yeah, it really depends.
That's good.
We've seen a lot of customers appreciate, especially when you're, maybe perhaps it's a bigger system, right? EKS is great.
Mm-hmm.
ECS Fargate also really helpful there, right? It's serverless.
Lightweight.
It's lower barrier to entry, right? Deploy, don't have to worry too much about scaling. Choose how many tasks we want to scale up, and it works. We've also seen customers appreciate using Lambda here, and whether that's just a Lambda function or using a Docker file with Lambda, we've seen both of those. Another thing we're working on to make it easier to deploy to Lambda is we're going to start publishing a Lambda layer. We're working on that at the moment. Yeah, so that should make it a lot easier to get a Lambda setup with Strands in the very near future.
Yeah, because all your dependencies will be provided by the layer, so you don't need to package that in your Docker file or your zip file. Recently, I mean, in July this year at the New York Summit, Amazon also announced Amazon Bedrock Agent Core, which is many things, but there is one component which is a runtime for agents. So we can also deploy Strands Agent on Agent Core.
Yes. So again, on our great Strands Agents website, we have the deployment guide for Agent Core. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you can build an agent on Strands. Just import the agent classes we mentioned. We have the Bedrock Agent Core SDK. Import that. So now we can configure our Strands agent to work on Agent Core. Right? We add a couple of decorators again. Couple of configurations, and now our agent is able to deploy to Agent Core, and we deploy it there. It's a managed serverless runtime for our agent, and the idea here that we're striving for is very simple developer experience to build the agent, as we spoke about with Strands. We can then modify and bolt on all of these extras like observability, session management, streaming, MCP, whatever, as we scale our agent, and then very simply deploy it to a managed runtime.
I'm sorry, I interrupt you. Continue.
Yeah, with that, we have our agent running on Agent Core runtime. Agent Core comes with a bunch of other nice features as well for running a production, right?
Yeah, that was my next question. Agent Core comes with different services around it. So the runtime is the core, but there is an identity services, a persistence service to persist the context across session. There are tools like browser tools and code run environment tools as well. Typically, the developer that wants to deploy and use these services are using the Agent Core SDK that you mentioned already. So are you going to wrap the Agent Core SDK inside Strands? And if you do, is there a risk to lose like the independence of Strands that allows developer to deploy anywhere with any type of services?
Yeah, so they are two separate SDKs at the moment, but they serve two different purposes, right? So Strands, you're building your agent logic. That is your agent's brain, essentially. With Agent Core runtime, with the Agent Core SDK and using the runtime with Strands, for example, it's focused there on hosting, deploying, running our agent, right? Not necessarily building the agent's logic. Agent core is just like Strands, also agnostic to which framework you're using. You can use LangGraph, CrewAI, Strands, whatever it may be. You can host all of these with agent core. So that's the idea there of keeping them separate. They kind of serve two different purposes. Yeah.
For the runtime, but I was talking about all the other service like Agent Core Gateway, Agent Core Identity, Agent Core Memory, I think it's called, persistence service.
I see. Yeah, so we have a couple of tools in Strands that integrate with these. So Strands has, we have the main SDK package and repository on GitHub. We have a couple of extra packages as well. There's an MCP server. If you're using Claude Code or Kiro or your Q Developer CLI, right? You can add this MCP server, and now your vibe coding client understands Strands. We have samples and stuff I mentioned. There is also a tools package that we vend, community supported. We accept pull requests on there. Strands is fully open source project, right? This tools package has a couple of tools for integrating with Agent Core. So a code interpreter. Your agent can now run code in an isolated sandbox. A web browsing tool. You can browse the web in an isolated sandbox. This kind of stuff.
Okay, so I see. So you're integrating the Agent Core services as tools. So from an agent, from a Strands agent point of view, Agent Core services are just like any other MCP tools that developer can choose to use or not.
Exactly. There are a couple of more beyond tools as well. We want to make it super easy to use Agent Core with Strands. So a couple more integrations that we're working on where Agent Core has a memory building block as well for your agents. We're working to integrate that as kind of like a session persistent store for Strands, as you mentioned, right? So if maybe I have my agents deployed on a distributed backend, right? Perhaps it's several Lambda functions. Maybe it's running on Agent Core itself. Maybe it's a bunch of ECS containers. Each time a request gets sent from my users to my agent, it could be running on a different, Lambda function or ECS container, right? Session persistence allows us to, as you mentioned, Sebastian, retrieve the same context for that same user's conversation, right? So we can continue the conversation, that sort of stuff as well. Integrating Bedrock Agent Core's memory service as a session persistence as well, something we're working on.
Something that I'm always a bit sad with, and it's not specific to Strands, is that as soon as we talk about AI and agent, the programming language is Python. And I can read and write Python code as a developer, but my Python code is certainly not idiomatic because Python is not the place where I spend all of my day. What are the plans, if there is any plan, to support other programming language, like the millions of TypeScript, Node.js developer or Java developers?
Yeah, we've had this question. I think this is one of our most upvoted issues on GitHub. So yeah, if you have feedback on this stuff, definitely go to GitHub, thumbs up some of the issues. We do look at those and take that into consideration. But to answer your question, we are working on a TypeScript SDK that will benefit customers that want to use TypeScript, JavaScript, Node.js for your agents, maybe run all of the code directly in the browser, whatever it may be. We are working on that at the moment as well. Yeah,
that's an excellent news for at least for the JavaScript developers.
We've had requests for a couple of other languages as well. Like
I guess Java and C# should be
Java,
top of the list as well.
Yes, .NET, Rust is another one as well. Yeah.
I have a naive question of how it works behind the scene when a team like yours decide to support another programming language. Are you looking into transpilation or automatic conversion from one to the other? Or are you going to maintain two code bases entirely differently and have the insane job of keeping the parity in between the two in terms of API?
Yeah, this is a super interesting question. One we've been going through a lot the last month or two. All of the above. I would say. Um, yeah, there are a lot of ways to do that kind of stuff, right? And we're looking for feedback on this on GitHub as well. We have open discussions there and RFCs that we post for the community to comment and give feedback on. But all of what you just mentioned, we're looking into, right? So many ways to do it. You could have completely separate TypeScript and Python code base, but we also don't just want to launch a TypeScript SDK that doesn't feel like Strands, right? We get a lot of positive feedback from customers on the developer experience of Strands, and
Mhm.
we want to incorporate that in every language that we support. There is something like attention pulling against that though, right? We also don't just want to make a Python SDK in TypeScript.
Mhm.
We want to make use of language features in JavaScript that are familiar to TypeScript,
Yeah, being
JavaScript engineers,
idiomatic
right? Yeah,
for the
exactly,
language.
exactly. So there are many ways to do this. We're also experimenting a lot. We've built, and we'll be publishing more of this in the coming weeks for others to see how we've done this as well. We're using agents to help us build some of this stuff, right? Of course, with a Strands
Strands
agent,
is built with Strands.
yes. So we've built a couple of agents integrated with GitHub. They can, read our GitHub repository. They can comment on issues. They can make pull requests and commits. They can't merge them. We still need to merge them, right? Which is good. We still need to review and merge, but we can go and review these on GitHub. Type a comment to our agent, and it will come back and fix what we've mentioned, right? So we're doing a lot of research in that area about how scalable this is, both for the initial development, also for ongoing development and maintenance as well. But yeah, you also mentioned cross transpiling and that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
We're also looking into this, maybe having like a core kind of interface defined for strands that these languages can essentially implement. But again, we do want to lean into idiomatic things in the
Mhm.
language. So it's a balancing act of all of that, really.
I guess there is a lot of things to learn, of experience to learn, and to take from the SDK team that manage SDK in 13 different language. Although the use case is a bit different, um, and the CDK team that applies that techniques of transpiling. I think the SDK is developed in JavaScript or TypeScript, and they generate the Java version and the Python version from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So one of the good things with Strands is that it's developed in open source, so it's not developed on AWS and we push the source from time to time on GitHub. It's really developed in the open, so the issues are open, the pull requests are open, the roadmap is open, so you can see what the team is working on. You can upvote issues and contribute to the discussion as well. One of the very frequent feedback I receive from developer, it's how good it is in terms of developer experience. It's super easy to get started. The documentation is well done, and I don't want to be mean with other services, but many developers told me they feel something different in Strands than traditionally with AWS. The look and feel of the website, the API is super easy to use. It's open to other model and model hosted somewhere else, not only on AWS, out of the box from day one. So it feels different. Your team did something different with Strands. Do you? It's obviously made on purpose, but you realize that that's aligned with the feedback you have.
Yeah, I think we've tried to really focus on developers first, right? I would say that, and kind of building strands in the open, community driven, right? Very community driven. It's one thing we've definitely tried to strive for, and yeah, we get a lot of positive feedback on it. So definitely, if you're interested, get involved. I would say make some issues for things you want to see in strands. Make some pull requests if you're interested in that as well. We tag some of the issues as ready for contribution. Those are some good ones to get started with. But yeah, definitely, we really want to keep strands being built in the open, and yeah, developers first.
And contributing to an open source project is not only sending a pull request. You can just report issues that you have. You can make pull requests on the documentation, not necessarily on the code. You can comment, you can upvote, you can send IDs and send feedback. So community-driven development is not only writing code, it's all these things around the project as well. It's super important to mention. Just to finish, we mentioned that the roadmap is open. I know it's a difficult exercise because we are recording this beginning of September. You will listen to the episode probably end of September, October, somewhere. So what's on your roadmap right now, that famous public roadmap that we talk about?
Yes, so we do have the public roadmap, and we're actively updating it. Gets updated every week or two. A couple of interesting things. So, of course, TypeScript SDK.
Yeah.
We are, as I mentioned earlier as well, right, improving some of the multi-agent stuff. So, for example, in a swarm, being able to call a remote node with A2A, right? Some of these extra features for multi-agent. Another interesting one is voice agents, or really it's calling it voice agents is really doing it a disservice. It's bidirectional streaming. So Strands will allow you to build an agent, connect your agent to models that you stream bytes into, they stream bytes out of. And this is how
Amazon Sonic model that allows to talk.
Nova Sonic, for example, or other voice models from other providers as well. You can talk to your agent in real time. You can interrupt it. It understands the tone of your voice, and it can talk back to you in real time. And you can connect this with other tools, right? So you can talk to an agent. It can access the internet, have memory. You can access the observability traces, deploy it on Lambda, everything we just spoke about,
That's super important because it seems simple like that. You say, send a stream of byte, receive a stream of byte, but it's actually much more complicated than that because it has to manage interruptions as well. So to detect when someone is trying to do like me, interrupt you when you're talking and let the model stop. So I think that's right. It's very complicated. So if it is nicely wrapped around a high level, easy to use API, that will be a big plus for developers.
Yes, we've got to keep that developer experience nice and easy.
What else?
So multi-agent, TypeScript, bidirectional streaming, voice agents, a few more model providers like Llama, CPP, a few things we're working on at the moment. We're conducting a lot of research with Amazon Robotics on a few projects where we're taking agents and applying them to embodied AI, physical AI. So this could be a robot. It could be an automotive vehicle. It could be edge inference or local inference, right? Maybe I'm running, maybe like a Llama model locally, or a Quen model, for example. So a lot of things in that area coming up as well, I would say, the next months.
So 2016 or 2017 will be the year of the robotic AI? Or...
2026, yes. Embodied physical AI is on the way, I believe, yeah.
So
some very interesting demos for customers.
2023, the large language model. 2024, the chatbot. 25, the agents. And 26, physical agents.
Yeah, let's see.
Thank you, Arron, for having described Strands and the way you developed it in the history of Strands within AWS and how it became an open source SDK that now everybody can use to build your AI agent and deploy them as well anywhere. Arron Bailiss, your tech lead for Strands. Thank you for having described Strands to our listeners. Thank you for having listened to this podcast until the end. See you next week for another episode. But now, go build your AI agent with Strands, obviously.